down to the learnings. And we've got senior developers that are actively training and mentoring the developers. And now we've kind of got this really cool cycle where you've got a lot of developers that have gone through the program over the last 3.5 years that are now completing the cycle and now starting to build up the new developers in the environment, which is
yeah, because you said after 4 years you kind of like, I don't want to say you kind of like stop holding their hand, but you know they're gonna have to figure it out on their own. But because you've kind of had this graduated, people that have graduated through your program and kind of keeping it alive, is that how it's like, you see it going long term after those 4 years? Like, how do you plan on staying connected to these companies and these techies?
No, the model starts to recreate itself, right? And that was the whole point when we founded this in the beginning, was that it's for the ecosystem, right? Andela is a small point in the person's career where they go through and now they're on to the next thing. They're on to starting a company, or they're on to being a senior developer that allows them to do that. And of course, it helps Andela because they're alumni, they're ambassadors, and now there's more tech leaders in the ecosystem that can now go and become and recreate the cycle, or even create a new Andela of some sort.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much. I don't want to hold you any longer, but please just do a quick sign off for me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Arise News, so say your name, what's your, Andela. We are watching Arise News. Do you want to just hold the mic?
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Ian Carnavale with Arise News.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. I would love to get your information because I think you're doing really dope things.
Is to sort of just pony up and give them feedback. For venture-backed businesses, scale is important. We're very keen on companies that can scale not just within Nigeria, but Pan-African, at least a couple of countries. And I think that's the ideal criteria for what a venture-backable business should look like.
So to start with, everybody who raised their hands, we absolutely encourage them, we demand of you to start your business. You all should be entrepreneurs, you are entrepreneurs, we encourage you to get out there and start your business. And many of those businesses can be organically funded, and the first people you should be talking to are customers. You should spend your time talking to customers instead of wasting your time talking to people like us. However, if the opportunity that you have in front of you requires more capital than you can fund it through customers to build it, or if the opportunity is so large and the market is so big that you require capital to capitalize on that opportunity, then you should be talking to people like the people on the panel. Would you agree?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that we see consistently is investable businesses, uninvestable founders. And so when you're trying to evaluate an entrepreneur that comes in, I think a lot of them spend a lot of time trying to convince you about the merits of the business. And for certainly seed stage investors like we are, what we're focused on is the merits of the founders. We'll figure out the business part, but if we are not convinced about the founders, we're not going to fund the business because that just makes no sense. So a lot of what we think entrepreneurs need to do when they come in is to make sure that there is entrepreneur business fit, right? That's the thing that we see that always kind of fails. Like, you're not the right person for this business. And then, of course, we've tried a few times and failed spectacularly to try to redirect these entrepreneurs.
So what I'll have you do is just introduce yourself.
Might be better fits for them. But they fight you. You know, they're like,
My name is Gregory Roxon. I'm the co-founder and CEO of M-Pharma.
Awesome. And we just saw you go on stage and say some really, really awesome things. One thing that stood out to me the most was the fact that you said business owners should really, really put value in their employees, to the point where it's like, if you know that there's a certain budget you're working with and there's certain constraints, that you should be willing to take less pay to build up your employees. Can you expand on that a bit more for the people?
Yeah, so there are two things. One is that at the end of the day, you want to incentivize your people to believe that you are in the journey with them, and that if you are telling them to make sacrifices, that you are also making those same sacrifices. That's the first point. The second point is that as a business owner, owner, if you give equity out to your employees, you are trying to tell them to believe in the value of that equity. Now, if you take a smaller salary because you own a bigger stake in the business, you are telling your employees that you believe so strong that this equity means so much that you will actually bet your own financial wealth on the value of your stake in the business. And that's a powerful message, because if you're actually doing salary negotiations and people already know that you take less, and you're saying take these stock options. We live in a culture where people don't really understand stock options, but you're like, well, I'm actually taking a smaller cash comp and I have much of my stake in equity. People actually, well, that seems fair. I'll actually take a higher option, which allows you to even save more money and then use that to invest in the activities. But I fundamentally believe that you just have to treat people well. It's just
I think it's, especially here, it's important because it's already a very stressful, we live in a very stressful environment, no light, infrastructure issues. I think it's very important to make sure that you're cultivating the right talents to bring them up, to push further. And especially with M-Farm, I'm wondering if you follow the same practices there. If not, you guys are doing such amazing things. Can you please just explain a bit more about your platform to the people as well?
So, in a short form, I say we sell prescription drugs across Africa. What we've done is to build supply chain software that allows us to take over the inventory of hospitals and pharmacies across the continent, right? So we currently run hospitals in Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia. So some of the more famous ones, Lagoon Hospital, we run Lagoon Hospital's pharmacy. When you go to Warri, Lily Hospital, we run Lily Hospital's pharmacy. When you go to Ghana, we have about 40 hospitals in Ghana. We have about 15 hospitals in Zambia. Every month we serve over 20,000 patients across our hospital network. And what we fundamentally realized was crucial for our business was the fact that we could create economy of scale by taking over the inventory of existing hospitals and pharmacies. And by building purchasing power, we can bring down the cost of drug and pass on those savings back to patients. So across if you go to any of our hospitals, you are paying 30 to 20% less than you pay if you walked into a pharmacy that is out there, that is not in pharmacy network, just because we have massive scale, because we buy large volumes of medicines across the continent. So we're able to negotiate directly with drug companies. Beyond that, if you have health insurance, if you have health insurance with Hajia or with in Ghana with Metropolitan, we actually manage drug benefits for these health insurers. So we design their drug formularies, we determine what price they reimburse, and we process those claims for them. So we're kind of a hybrid business where there are different phases of our model, but fundamentally we work towards one objective: to bring down the cost of medicines for patients across the continent.
Logistically, that sounds very, very intricate in regards to managing multiple hospitals, having your own, and then also doing an e-commerce platform. So please, how are you scaling all of that? And then also, of course, because you're working with a larger inventory, you're able to push costs down, but how are you logistically able to track all of that?
It comes down to people. We hire the best people who are extremely committed. No. We actually have not. Actually, in Ghana, our biggest source of talent is MEST. We are the largest single employer of MEST graduates in Ghana. So yeah, but again, it comes down to that we've been able to scale. We just have about 44 employees. When you think about the scale that we run, we just have 44 employees. We have one of the highest revenue per employee metrics of any startup on the continent, right? Because we hire the best, right? And we build software. About 40% of our team is in engineering. And the remaining 16%, we have doctors, we have pharmacists, we have business people. We hire a lot of Africans from the diaspora. We bring them back home to work at M-Pharma. So yeah, it's people. That's how we're able to do what we do.
Thank you so much, Gregory. Please just do a quick sign up for me, your name, and then you're watching Arise News.
My name? Okay. My name is Gregory Roxon, co-founder, CEO of M-Pharma.
Thank you so much, Gregory. I would love to get your contact information as well.
Because they have all the answers now, because they have gone to so many pitches. At that point in time, one might be inclined to take a decision on that and then leave off those that are really genuinely require these investments.
Do you sometimes meet founders who feel like they're pitching for a living? They go from pitch event to pitch event to pitch event, but they're not building their business in the meantime.
I met one in LA that he was pitching, and then Midway, we got interrupted. When we restarted, I think he forgot which business he was pitching. So he brings out 5 business cards, and he's trying to figure out which one he was going to give me. And I'm thinking, are you serious? Is this man okay?
So the trick question is, do you have any other ideas? And then sometimes you hear, yes, we have 3 other ideas. Do you want to hear them? Like, so, just being committed to one thing is super important, I think.
So let's move the conversation to stage and what your expectations are. And everybody's going to have different expectations. And it depends on at what stage you write a check. But for when you're ready to write a check for a founder, and very often because people invest in lines, not in points, you'll meet a founder much earlier than when you're ready to write a check. But when you're ready to write a check, what are your expectations for where that business is? What validation, what revenue, what sort of customer traction are your expectations? And maybe we can have each of you answer this question just to get a sense of if the people in the audience are ready to pitch yet, or if they should be focused on building the business.
So for us, we invest in companies that are post-MVP. So you've built the first basic version of the product. It doesn't have to be the version you're going to scale, but you have a basic version of the product. Post-traction as well, early traction. We also are very keen on complementary teams. In the early days, we felt we could help non-technical founders, build these companies, but we know better now. So we now look for very complementary teams that have the technical competence and have the ops and the business development if that's important. We like to gauge ambition. And that's a really difficult thing to do, right? Because as you support the founders, it gets to a point where sometimes it feels like you want more out of the business for the founder than they want out of it. And so being able to judge the ambition of the founder early, I think is something that I'm still trying to figure out. On a personal note, I typically like to ask myself, would I work for this founder? Would I be in their employ? And if the answer is no, then I'm probably not going to be warm towards the investment. A second question I ask myself is, would I be willing to introduce this founder to everyone I know? Because besides just writing a check, we're very hands-on, and we like to, just sort of throw all our networks and access to the founders. And so it's really important you work with founders you can trust and that you believe in. In terms of what we look for, typically this conversation, sometimes you can start a conversation and it lasts for some time. What you want to show as a founder is progress over time. So we spoke last month. This is how far we've come since the last time we spoke. And that shows that you're committed and you're measuring traction and you're keeping your eyes on your metrics.
So because we are somewhat unusual, because we invest at literally stages from 50,000 to 20 million, the founder types on the businesses that we're investing are quite varied. So we actually invest less than 50,000, and we do that infrequently, but there's a very specific reason why. For less than 50,000, what we're looking for interesting founders, and they may or may not have a decent MVP, but for us, we're sort of like, will this person figure this thing out? All right, and what we're also sort of realizing is that for some of those founders, they're interesting enough, but they can't raise money. But the minute we say we're going to give them some money, then all the rest of the money shows up, right? So there's some sort of run-on benefit from being able to say, I'm going to give you a little bit of money, and then raise the rest of it and go figure it out. I think once you get past the pre-seed into sort of the seed, you're looking at a much different kind of founder. They've been able to take a product to market. They can show a pretty good understanding of the market and its demands. They can show an ability to sort of build a team, but also be able to retain a team, because that's another weird thing that people don't spend a lot of time on. And one day you can just see them growing. Now, these businesses are fascinating because, hold on, sorry, apologize. So these businesses are fascinating because what we're finding is that, when they grow from seed to say seed plus, we have to make sure that the entrepreneurs are focused on growing themselves, because a lot of the discussions are always about companies scaling, but very few discussions about the humans scaling, right? So how are those founders growing? So you're watching for that. And so a lot of the investments we're making that are later on don't show up by someone just walking in. They're long-term relationships. You're engaging, you're discussing, you're updating, and 6 months will pass. And that's why I keep telling people, a no at the beginning doesn't mean it is a straight no. It can become a yes later, but you have to sort of work through that. Now, I think for the early growth companies, you're finding founders that they're the elite founders. And they know exactly where they're going. They absolutely understand the market. They know how to retain teams. They know how to upgrade their teams, which is also very important. They don't stick, if you're not sort of upgrading yourself as a team member, you go. And they're very ambitious. Right? Now, ambition doesn't mean you have to go and win the whole of Africa, and I think that's very important. Ambition is really about, can I build a business that dominates this market? Right? And it could be a market as limited as Lekki, right? Or it could be a market that's pan-regional or pan-African. It doesn't really matter. But the one thing that is consistent is that for us, revenues are great, right? But it's easy to game them. What we're really looking for is consistent revenues from a rabid set of repeat customers. That's all we care about. And you will find very quickly that you can have 1,000 customers or 100,000 customers, but it is really fundamentally about how much they spend with you every month, every quarter, over and over and over again. And I think the best founders understand that bit. They just don't mess with it. The Printivo founders are like that. They're like, listen, we're not trying to get 1 million people or 2 million people. We just need 100,000 who are spending $25 a month, and they come in every month because print is an everyday habit. So fundamentally, that's sort of what we look for. Part of the key takeaway here is that because you don't have revenues, should not mean that you're scared of approaching an investor, right? What you really should focus on is, can I build this product? Can I execute? Can I get this thing to market? Can I understand the customer? And can I get better? And I think the final point is that, this whole thing about the technical founder, we've done it in some companies. We've not done it in some other companies. And we realize that there are technical founders and there are founders that can think technically, but who are not necessarily technical, right? And you should be open, I think, as an investor to seeing both.
That's a great point. There are founders who would think technically, may not be coders, but can take that lead. I'd like to turn, I think we, just with respect to our time, Rising Tide is a really important initiative for catalyzing women as angel investors. I'd like to hear about women founders and how, as a community, we can nurture and support more women founders and reduce bias against women founders, and how we can support that as an investment community.
Okay, that's predominantly is what we're working towards. The term bias may be subjective. Predominantly what tends to happen is that there are women founders that are very passionate about their products or their service. But then you find out that the elements that surround the passion are not there. So the structure, for instance, the development of their team, their financials. And so that is one of the things that we're looking at educating the women founders about. That you need to look at not only what you are passionate about, it's not about the passion, it is an added advantage for you to have all the other elements in place for you to to go to any investor. So we're looking at educating, mentoring, and grooming them, and hand-holding them through the different levels. We're going to start with the early stage founders, and then we hand-hold them from when we meet them up to when we invest in them. And there, of course, thereon, we're in the company. So pretty much providing all those other services that the female founders do not have. And that is how we believe that we're going to develop them. One other element we want to instill in them is that as a female founder or as an entrepreneur, you should also be looking at developing other entrepreneurs and investing in other entrepreneurs. And that's where you'll be able to loop in the circle and then get more people in the ecosystem that are like you, or that have the passion like you, or that you have interest in, and then the circle goes on.
So getting that positive flywheel spinning, and entrepreneurs become angel investors, and we nurture new businesses, and that's the way an ecosystem develops.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Yeah, please.
You know, we invested in a company we just recently announced it, called Grow Intelligence. It's essentially the Bloomberg for agriculture, and it's founded by a woman. And she came into our offices, I think, in January or February to pitch. And she left 2.5 hours later, and literally, I was like, Jesus wept. That was like a tornado that just came through this office. And we're like, listen, we're going to get on this cap table. We have to get on this cap table. And when you run into these types of elite founders, right, male or female, I think one of the things we're trying to figure out is, okay, how do we sort of get you to cross-pollinate some of the things that you're really great at, right? And it's always the little things. And, you know, when we see the women founders that come through, you know, we're investing in a couple of them now. We're very excited, but it's a very difficult thing culturally. The context is hard. There's a lot of pressure, right? So when you see them and they've sort of been able to sort of deal with that, they're even better than their peers because they deal with different types of pressures, right? And so, but I think you're right in the sense of how do you get them, you know, to sort of support each other, but it has to be cross-pollinated because in the end they're also going to manage, you know, both women and men and the like. But I will tell you, when you see them as the lead founders, they are head and shoulders above everybody else we've ever seen. Head and shoulders.
Okay, we have. Whoop. Check. Okay, I think we're winding down here. I'd like to do a brief pitch from each of us. As investors, we often talk about how we're going to be strategic to founders. So in addition to being able to write a check, I'd like to give everybody an opportunity to very briefly, just a brief pitch for yourself and how you can be strategic to companies in this room.
That's a good one. Hi, so I'm pitching the audience, right? Cool. Well, I guess besides writing a check, we roll up our sleeves and we essentially become the second or third co-founder. We're pretty early, so we'll ride with you. If you come in our program, the acceleration program, I mean, we're all hands on deck. We're making phone calls. We're just sort of figuring it out with you. In the early days, it's really hard. You try a hack today, it doesn't work. We're there with you. You know, just sort of sharing our experiences with you. And, you know, yeah, I think that's it.
So and this is applicable to whatever size investment we make, but we're looking at sort of different segments of where we're going to try to bring value. So one of them is to support the founders and his or her sort of the management team. It's a very lonely job being a CEO. And so being able to have someone that, you know, being able to be there accessible, available. You know, you can talk through the lows and the highs. That's, I think, a very important thing that no one sort of really talks about. The second thing is being able to assist the management team in strategy and processes. So, for instance, you know, our portfolio management team is actually at Hotels at NG today. They're there the whole day. We do this generally once or twice a quarter to sit in, talk to the team, figure out what's going on, measure all the processes, and I come back and talk to the CEO about where we see the gaps. We do this for all the companies. It was kind of interesting because we just made an investment and the CEO was in shock because it's a pre-seed investment, and he's like, "Oh, we get that for that amount?" I was like, "Yes, you get it for that amount." The third is how you think about the future, right? So, you know, we have someone who can help you on products. You know, we have folks who can help you about how you think about fundraising. And for some of our companies that are now beginning to look at acquiring other companies, we also have that in-house expertise to drive how you think about M&A and how you can execute it, right? So there's a lot of different things, you know, that, you know, in terms of sort of like the joint expertise that we can bring. And, you know, but it's a lot more than just money. And for us, you know, we look at it not just about being able to grow these founders and their teams, but, you know, it's also a way to sort of defend and mitigate the risk that, you know, in investing. And so being able to be on call for these founders, I think, is very important. Lots of people talk about lots of things, but, you know, in the end, it's really all about what you can do for them on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, we are looking for women who are interested in becoming angel investors, who are new to angel investing, who are female founders and want to be invested in. We are looking for women that have money but do not have the time to invest. We're looking for experienced women angel investors. And one of the things that we are looking at doing and that we do is to handhold you through the process. So aside from giving you money, or we may not even look at you for investing into, but we would handhold you whether we're going to give you money or not, and try and nurture you from beginning. I don't know if anybody knows MedSurf. MedSurf came to us, and we didn't invest in her, but we took her through the ropes and tried to mentor her up until now she has raised her money. And so those are the type of things we are interested in ensuring that the women founders have access to the investments. The women founders can become the torpedoes, or what did you say? Tornadoes in the room when they go to an angel investor. And then we're also interested in ensuring that women are interested in investing in other entrepreneurs and other women investors.
Well, thank you. You don't often hear investors pitch you, but when there's one of those women who's the true tornado, and we just have to get on their cap table, you know, you've heard it here about why you would want to choose all these my fellow panelists as your investors. So thank you very much for the time today, and thank you very much to the audience.
Today's setup is not the, I mean, if you were here last year, it's a bit different. This is not a setup that we actually planned for. So a lot of things happen, like we can blame everything to the Nigerian factor, right? So because that hides multitude of sins. But tomorrow, a lot of things will change. I cannot promise you about the AC, but we'll do something about it. And there'll be lots of things tomorrow. There'll be a good lunch. There'll be a good breakfast in the morning. So if you come early, you get breakfast. And there'll be good panel in the morning tomorrow. But today, we still have two panelists, okay? Two more panelists. Actually, one of them is going to be like a fireside chat. As you can see, it's not a panel. And many of you will know the person I'm going to introduce now. You've listened to his music. Every time I enter Uber, there's a likelihood of the Uber driver playing his music. And we're going to be having and many of you don't know, actually, I'm just knowing today that he used to be a startup founder. And he has so much passion in tech, and I think he's going to do more in tech as well. I was asking him about that. And today, we have with us Oluwatosin Ajibade, Mr. Easy, and he'll be interviewed by Maya. So I just wanted to give them a good round of applause as they come to the stage, and they'll be talking about his business, what is his passion, and his vision for tech. So again, let's give it up for Mr. Easy.
Hello. Hello. Okay, there we go.
Hello.
How are you doing this afternoon?
Very fine, thank you.
Where are you coming from today?
Ikeja.
Ah.
Yeah.
And before that?
Before that, Ghana.
Okay, okay, okay.
And before that.
Okay, well, we're glad to have you here. Thank you for making time for us today. So, I want to get started. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are wondering, why are you here? Why is Mr. Easy in tech? Tell me about your background. What do you know about entrepreneurship?
I think right from like 16, I started my first business, which was more like an Uber without an app. So I remember using my school fees to buy a taxi, unpainted taxi, and then we will use it to do on-demand services for taxis. And it just moved on from there to me doing parties, to me doing other businesses, until I ended up in tech in 2015, and music, yeah.
Okay, okay. And on the note of tech and music, there's something that you were talking about recently. You're working with Nigerian artists, you're working with local artists. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about this project, where it came from, and why you chose the revenue model, or why you chose to split the way you did with founders?
All right, so it's just a basic case of, since in 2015 I got into a VC situation. I got into 440NG, and the company I was involved in got funded by 440NG, Chika, Creston, and basically all the time I spent doing the tech prepared me for the music. And as soon as I got to the music business, I found out that it was just like any startup. Because at the end of the day, it was an idea. It was a product you were trying to sell. You were trying to get subscribers, call it fans. It was the same thing as any business. So, and getting into the music, I just thought that, every entrepreneur wants control. He wants to have some level of control, and he wants his business to succeed. I want my music to be big, so if I'm doing something with another entrepreneur who's an artist, it's only fair that we share revenue to keep everybody motivated. Yeah. Okay,
okay. So you make it sound like you've been in music and entrepreneurship your whole career. There was no professional, there was no corporate. You didn't work in.
I'd say just slight, just like internship, maybe total 9 months internship with my engineering. I studied mechanical engineering, so 9 months doing that, and then 3 months working for my dad. My dad owns He owns an ad hoc helicopter charter company. So I worked with him for 3 months. Yeah.
Okay, so then your parents were always okay with you going into entrepreneurship? Because I know there are university students in the audience, there are many aspiring entrepreneurs, moonlighting entrepreneurs in the audience. And was there a certain point at which you would advise people is the right time to jump into entrepreneurship, or did your parents and your family support you the whole way?
I think it was a mix. My parents have always supported everything I've done, but it comes to a point where, as a parent, you start to look at your son, who you've trained to MSc level, and instead of him to take a 9-to-5 that has some form of security, he's telling you he wants to be an entrepreneur and he wants to start selling phones in Computer Village. Like, you're gonna think he's crazy. So I remember my dad giving me an ultimatum of March or April 2016 to have enough growth to prove that my business was, or my entrepreneurship drive was worth pursuing. And luckily, the music came in before then and just took everything, to where it is now.
Okay. So what was that growth? What happened?
It was basically, number one, it was revenue.
It was the what?
It was revenue.
Uh-huh.
The revenue. I started generating revenue with the music. Even the business, phonetrader.ng, had started generating revenue. We were already partnered with Airtel. We were in Airtel stores doing phone trading. Till today, we are still at the iStore at Ikeja Mall. If you go to the iStore at Ikeja Mall and you want to do a trade-in or a phone swap, my company runs that. So they were seeing growth in terms of revenue. We had almost 14 staff. I had 14 staff working for me. So there were evidences to show that my business, be it the music or the phone trading business, was actually showing growth. So everybody was fine.
I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs and engineers in the audience that are thinking about what they want to do next, their next big idea. So somebody who plays that space in the tech and the music industry, do you have any advice? What are the cutting edge innovations that people should be thinking of? Where are the collaborations between tech entrepreneurs and the entertainment industry now?
I think first things first, something I learned from the early days pushing Phone Trader was having strategic partners and strategic investors. So for instance, 440NG didn't promise millions in investment. They promised to give us enough money, and what was the main selling point for 440NG was the value add. So for instance, we started phonetrader.ng, and in 2 months of operation, we were already in like 6 Airtel stores. That's like awesome scalability, real quick. And Airtel was doing marketing for us real quick for a new business, So I think for any business, you just have to find partners or investors that do not just bring cash. Because at the end of the day, the cash can go, but it's more about the value add your investors bring in. And it's the same thing in music, only that this time in the music business, the VCs are the record labels. So in the same vein, you should be looking for a record label. Yeah, the VCs are like record labels, because what do VCs do? VCs invest in a couple of startups, and maybe they invest in 12 startups. Maybe just one would be successful. It's the same thing. Record labels sign 100 artists and expect one artist to be the star and cover the losses across board. So it's the same thing, and that's been the guiding part of my music operation as well. I see a record label partnership as like a VC investment. So the day I sign, it will be with a partner that will not just bring money, but will bring value add. Yeah.
So, in regards to partners, now you get to make the decisions who you work with. Everyone seems to want Mr. Easy. Yeah. So, but what happened in the beginning, before you were big? How did you establish your first, you said you worked with Airtel. How did you establish that major partnership? And even with the music, you have collaborations with international organizations. How did you get to first step, that first relationship?
Okay, I think the first thing is believing in your product, which I'm sure every entrepreneur believes in their product. Now, if you believe in your product, you have to focus on data, like who are your customers? When we started the music, shout out to my team over here, we saw that most of our customers, now let me not use customers, most of my fans were Africans in diaspora. So Nigerian kids, South African kids in diaspora, in the UK, in London. And when we saw all of this, what we just did was we focused on targeting marketing to kids in diaspora. So when we're doing Facebook ads, we'll target Facebook ads to London, and we'll target it to University of London, all the schools we know. We would even go down to look for the Afro-Caribbean societies and target the ads to them. And till today, that's what we do. So I feel if you're passionate about your product and you know the data, you can then walk up to anybody. Like we walked up to Airtel and told Airtel that you have customers who want to trade in their phones. You have customers with iPhone 5s, and you sell iPhone 6. Now, you're not going to buy used iPhone 5s. Let us take the used iPhone 5 and give you discount vouchers, and you sell your iPhone 6. So it's because we knew that the partner wanted something from us. There was something we could offer to the partner, and it's the same thing we do with the music, even when we meet the likes of partners in the music, be it publishers or DSPs, whatever. It's just about being passionate about your product and knowing the data that's behind your product.
I think, hello? Okay. You touch on growth, and I know you have a lot of growth hack strategies like promotion at specific events. Can you talk to the audience about how to go from 0 to 1 million, 0 to 10,000, whether it's users, whether it's customers, whether it's fans? What are some other growth hack strategies you have?
For us, is something I learned from being in the 440 NG space was you don't really need to target everybody. Like, say for instance, you sell bread in the mornings. You sell bread and akara in the mornings. And on the road where you sell bread and akara, there are students whose school, like 2 blocks away, there's a school. Now, if you start spending money trying to reach all the people in the community, you're just wasting a lot of money. But you could first focus on spending your little marketing budget on all the students who pass through that route going to school. And then they will start buying bread and akara, and maybe their teachers will start buying bread akara, and it will spill over. So for me, it's been about focusing on your core customers, marketing to as close as possible, market to your core customers, and then increase marketing like that, because they'll spread the word. And it's the same thing in music. If I play my music for you and I get you to like my music, you will get your friend to like my music. It's the same thing.
You have for the entrepreneurs, for the engineers, for the investors who are just visiting Lagos, looking at Nigeria, looking at the continent? Is there any advice that you have, any tips, tricks, words of wisdom you have on business building on the continent? Well,
I feel like Africa, it's it goes beyond saying that Africa is like the best place to invest right now because there's so much opportunity and there's so much talent, most especially in Nigeria. Like we've not done a quarter. We've not gotten to a quarter of what we can do